Picture your life as a fellowship table, and you're coming to the table with a plate of fresh fruit. And the narcissist in your life is coming to the table with a plate of rotten apples. Are you going to allow him or her to sit at your table? Fellowship is defined as meeting together to share common beliefs and common purposes. So if you're coming to the table with the fruit of the spirit and the narcissist is coming to the table with the works of the flesh, what's the purpose of sitting at the table together? How can two walk together except they be agreed? Basically, you guys shouldn't be sitting at the table together at all. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about date night with the narcissist, my experience of dating a narcissist before and after marriage. It's a 14-year marriage to a covert narcissist. And really, I would say date night is more like fright night because you're not really sure who you're going to be going out with for that night. You don't know if it's going to be Jekyll or if it's going to be Hyde. You're not sure which one is going to show up to the party. So before I got married to the narcissist and we were dating, the date nights were really romantic. He was just the sweetest person, the perfect gentleman. And he admitted to me after the marriage that the reason he was that way was he called it presenting. He told me that he was presenting because Black women love arabesque movies, BET arabesque movies. And so he told me, frankly, he was just presenting a character from one of those movies. That's what he told me. Sickening, but that's what he said. So in going on a date with a narcissist, there were plenty of things that I had to get past to even go on the date. There were plenty of things that he did as a prerequisite before going on a date. So one of those things was basically I had to pay for the date. So I wasn't getting asked on dates by him. I had to plan the dates and I had to pay for them. And that was something that had to happen. Another thing that was guaranteed to happen before the date was that the narcissist was going to take forever to get dressed. Extended time in the bathroom, getting dressed and all of that. And we were guaranteed to be late for whatever event. So even if we had a concert to go to, we were pretty much guaranteed to be late because he was going to take his sweet and precious time getting dressed and ready. Another thing that I had to endure was constant questions about which outfit he should wear, which belt matches the best with his shirt and shoes. I mean, all different types of questions about which way he should cut his mustache. I mean, and I'll talk about his mustache in another video. But just lots and lots of dedication to how he looked, his attire before we went out. It was too much of a focus on that, in my opinion, for that. Another opinion of mine was the dinner dates were the absolute worst for me. I feel like that's where I was kind of treated not great at all, not courteous at all. And excuse my son in the background. He's not feeling the best. He's has a little cough, but that happens this time of year. Um, but the dinner dates were the worst. He was quite rude and quite inconsiderate. So let's go over how. So first of all, as far as entering the restaurant and walking to the table, being escorted to the table, the narcissist always walked in front of me. He never walked beside me. He never grabbed my hand to walk in together. He never, walked behind me and let me walk first. None of that. It was always he's walking first and he's walking fast. That's number one. As we're being escorted to our seats all the time, he would cross in front of me to sit down first. Even though he was in front of me already walking ahead of me, he didn't let me sit down first. He always, always, always crossed in front of me to the point to where he's almost tripping me up, like I was almost about to fall, because he crossed in front of me like that. So I don't understand that, but I guess he was trying to communicate he's first and foremost, he's most important. And that was quite embarrassing, also to endure that. And it, it just made me feel very, very just not important. I'll say that. Another thing that he did was order first. So, like when the waiter comes over to take your order, he's ordering first. And even though the waitress may ask me what I want, he's jumping in to order first. So his order gets taken first. Now, sometimes I don't mind that, but what I'm trying to say is if you're going to order first, also order for me. So I don't mind in that case if you do it like that, but he wouldn't do that. He would even know my order, but still wouldn't still wouldn't give it to the waitress. Like I had to say it myself. So he never pulled a chair out for me to sit down first, nothing like that. And when he did like hold the door of the restaurant open for me, he would be looking around to see if anybody was looking at him. You know, everything was a show. He was definitely a show pony, a prancing pony. He had to be seen. Had to be seen. Another thing that I forgot about is on the way to said date, restaurant, whatever the case, he was constantly changing the radio station, especially if there was a song on the radio that I liked, he would turn it right away. And he would always say, well, I'm driving, so I should have control over the radio. Another thing that he would do was gaze at the waitress a lot of times. If he found her to be cute or something like that, or even, if he didn't, he made it a point to, make eye contact with the waitress and constantly make eye contact and look at him up and down and all the things like that, just like I wasn't even sitting there. And even a lot of times he would allow the waitress to flirt with him because for some reason, the way that he dressed and everything like that, they thought that, he, was going to be responsible for the tip. They didn't know that, I was paying on the date and they didn't know that I was responsible for the tip. So, okay. Another thing that he did on these dates with me was constantly check his watch. He was always looking at the time on his watch, constantly throughout the whole date. And he would appear bored. I think he actually was bored. He didn't really engage in much conversation unless it was about him or about the food. Um, really, no real communication and no real bonding over the date. It's none of that. It was just he would look at me occasionally, look at his watch, and then, kind of look off to the side. But you can tell he definitely did not want to engage. Another thing about these dates was that they would never turn into extended dates. So after the date, he didn't, try to make plans to do other things. He didn't want to do romantic things after the date. He would always, feel like when the date was over, that was his cue to leave. So he would go and hang out late with other people after he went on a date. He did it just enough to say, well, at least I went on a date. And that's what he would say to me. Oh, I did this date for you, so you should be happy that I went on the date for you. So now I'll briefly talk to you about the few times that he did take me on a date and pay and everything like that. These times were almost pretty much always like a setup. He would be really nice and it would be totally random, totally spontaneous. Oh, let me take you out. And I remember this one time in particular, he took me to a barbecue joint and it was a really nice dinner. We had conversation. Actually, he was the one talking during this time. and, telling me about an experience that he had. And after the date, I guess Jekyll came out. I guess I went on a date with Hyde. And then when we got back in the car, Jekyll came out. And Jekyll didn't like something that I said at the table. He didn't ever like me telling him something that, I felt like maybe he should try next time when he was having a hard time with something. And so he snapped on me. When I say snapped, he really snapped. I mean, I got cussed out and I got chewed out. And he basically argued with another gentleman before our date. And I guess the other gentleman was able to kind of make his point, and, you know, the narcissist didn't really have a rebuttal. And so when we were on our date, I just mentioned, one or two rebuttals that he could have possibly said. Oh boy, what did I do that for? Because when we got back to the car, he really let me have it. Now, what I don't understand is, why didn't he let that guy have it? If he's capable of chewing me like that, he should have been able to chew that guy that he had an issue with. But nevertheless, he went and took it out on me. And so I just remember like crying really, really hard in the car because he was saying some super mean things like, oh, that's why you don't have any friends. And, that's why you're not invited places. And that's why, people don't want to be around you. And just a lot of hurtful things like that. And which weren't true because, if he really took a look at what was going on in our relationship, it was the other way around. It was like, nobody's going to come over here because they kind of know what's going on over here. They kind of know, things about you. But, I didn't say that, but, that's pretty much what it was. But, I had to pretty much bear the brunt of his frustrations. Anytime he felt bad and he wanted to let loose, I had to get it. He couldn't say the real truth. The reason I don't have any friends is because he's isolated me. I'm 5 hours away from my family and my best friend in another state. I'm introverted. All these things, okay, yeah, maybe that's why I don't have friends, but he would just say it's the fact that you have any kind of opinion. That's why you don't have any friends. It was a strange way to look at it. And, for me, I didn't understand the way he thought. Everything was my fault. Every single thing was my fault. Did you know that doing good to others and communicating with them is a sacrifice? And did you know that when we do it, that God is pleased with that? I found that in Hebrews 13 and 16. I thought that was very interesting. That being good to others and communicating with them is something that you give of yourself. So definitely, it is a sacrifice. But a lot of people, especially narcissists, aren't willing to do that. Genesis 2 and 24 talks about a man leaving his father and his mother and cleaving to his wife. And to cleave to the wife is basically like being glued to her. And so with narcissists, they don't want to cleave, they want to leave. The Bible talks about being courteous. It's absolutely something that we need to do. This is 1 Peter 4 and 9. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. We don't need to be rude. We don't need to accept the narcissist's rude behavior either. Colossians 3 and 19. Husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. And this last scripture talks about the sacrificial love that a husband should have for his wife. This is Ephesians 5:28 through 29. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, even as the Lord the church. Let me know if you can relate to any of the situations that I mentioned in this video. Let me know your dating stories, your horror stories with the narcissist, and I'll see you on the next video. Remember to walk in the light.